Welcome to the extended version of this lesson on the story Climax. We just covered what this moment is, how it's improved by a strong goal, and how to use climax twists to make a more exciting story climax. Now, let's talk about personal victories, what to do when a protag dies, how to pull off a climax gateway, and finish off by looking at the story climax in action with an in-depth example of 1979's Alien. Let's start by talking about personal victories. We introduced this concept in the extended version of the rock bottom lesson, but to recap, a personal victory is a type of ending that shows the protag failing at their goal, but still being satisfied. Rocky is the prime example, as he loses to Apollo Creed, but still lasts 15 rounds, meaning that personally, Rocky would consider this a victory. This also includes stories where the world would consider the protag a failure, but they still see themselves as a success. Two examples include Eddie the Eagle and Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. Though each protag technically fails at their task, they still consider themselves to have won. You'll see this most often in sports or competition movies, as the goal is usually to win first place. These personal victory endings show the protags losing their competition, but still being happy they participated or made it that far. This can add a lot of depth to a story, as it can really highlight the theme. When a protag fails at their goal, they are failing at the A story, the plot, or the external. By showcasing a character being satisfied with this failure, we are highlighting that the internal is more important than the external. A perfect example of this is in 2006's Cars, when protag Lightning McQueen loses the race to help another competitor. This shows us that McQueen's need of cooperation is more important than his goal of winning the race. Or, to put it another way, being a good sport has more value than being a winner. You might also find stories when the protag dies in the story climax. But just because a protag dies, it doesn't mean the story is a tragedy. Often, this is a form of personal victory, as the protag gives up their life for a cause. You can see this in, big spoilers, Leon the Professional and Promising Young Woman. Even though the protags die, they die for a specific reason, which means they don't die in vain. But usually, to make this work, you need to emphasize exactly what they died for in the next phase, the aftermath. Their death needs to have an impact. A great example of this is, another spoiler, in Saving Private Ryan, as in the end we discover the man in the graveyard is not the protag, but Private Ryan, who cherishes the sacrifice protag Miller made for him. In other words, we see the impact of the protag's death. Let's also quickly touch on the climax twist. If your protag literally dies and is reborn, it is often during the climax twist that they die and then are reborn shortly after. You can see this in The Matrix or in Ready Player One, and this is used most often in Chosen One stories. In both examples, the protag is killed during the climax twist, definitely making it seem like the antag has won. However, because they are special or are the chosen one, they are reborn and end up defeating the antag after all. And if they don't die here, it will probably be in the moment of peril, as seen in the final Harry Potter film. Finally, let's talk a little more about climax gateways. We covered this in the Inner Gateway extended lesson, but we should touch on it here as well. A climax gateway occurs when the epiphany is shifted from the inner gateway to the story climax. Usually, the protag makes it to the story climax but struggles or stumbles. Then, something triggers them to undergo their epiphany, and then, embracing their need, they find success. One example of this is in 2020's Magic Camp, where protag Theo still hasn't found his need of self-assurance. He walks onto the stage in the story climax and stumbles. However, his camp counselor Andy told Theo that if he looks into the wings, he will see what a real magician looks like. When Theo looks, he sees a mirror. Suddenly, Theo undergoes his epiphany, embraces self-assurance, and finds success, all because of a climax gateway. Now, let's see the story climax in action with our in-depth example.
Alien is a 1979 sci-fi horror film that follows Ripley, a worker on a spaceship, as she and her crew try to rid the ship of a dangerous alien before it kills them all. This story features plenty of twists and turns, which is why we chose it for an in-depth example. The super basics of the story are this. Ripley and her crew are diverted to investigate a strange signal on an unknown planet. There, they pick up an alien who quickly becomes a threat. They try to kill it, but keep failing. Eventually, Ripley and two crew members decide to escape the ship and blow it up, but during this final plan, the two crew members are killed, leaving Ripley as the last survivor. Which brings us to the story climax. Ripley starts the self-destruct sequence, but as she rushes to the escape pod, she finds the alien blocking her path. So she rushes back to stop the self-destruct sequence, only to be seconds late. So she rushes back to the escape pod and blasts off. However, she's surprised to find the alien has snuck into the pod. Using quick thinking, she blasts out the alien and torches it with the engines, saving herself and, of course, the cat. To start, we know this is the story climax because it is the moment implied by the catalyst and where Ripley achieves her goal. Namely, is when she defeats the alien. This goal is clarified at the midpoint when the chestburster kills Kane, and the crew realizes they must now kill the alien. Ripley's final plan is to blow up the ship to kill the alien, but when that fails, she must launch it from the escape shuttle and kill it in space. So most importantly, we see this story climax accomplishes the goal, which is its main purpose. We also get a great and convincing climax twist. When Ripley makes it onto the shuttle, we assume she has succeeded, especially as things calm down. So we're really caught off guard when she discovers the alien on board, the climax twist, and must defeat it once and for all. Plus, we get a second climax twist earlier as Ripley tries to make it to the escape shuttle but runs into the alien, sending her running back to stop the self-destruct sequence. Notice two more boxes this moment checks. First, it showcases the protag facing the antag alone. Ripley has been stripped of all allies and must now face the alien one-on-one. Second, the goal of kill the alien is super specific, tangible, and binary, which ensures this story climax carries a lot of power. We know exactly what we are waiting for and will clearly know if Ripley succeeds or fails. Overall, this is a suspenseful scene that accomplishes everything a good story climax should, and it's so successful in part because of how it was set up, especially with a specific, tangible, and binary goal.
That brings us to the end of this extended lesson on the story climax. You should now have a strong understanding of what this moment is, how to spice it up with a climax twist, and how to create a personal victory. And in the next lesson, we're finishing off our story with the final phase where we get to see the results of the journey.